This is what is termed a quasi-judicial meeting, which means that the members of this committee serve not as ward councillors but as representatives of council as a whole. No decisions have been made before this meeting, and only members who have completed the mandatory training are able to vote in this meeting. In fact, all members have attended that training. We've also got people here who have stated that they wish to speak on a particular planning application. We deal with those applications on an area basis, and I'll introduce those people at the relevant time. And just to remind those people that your contribution should be limited to 3 minutes. Can I remind myself and all members present to switch off their mobile phones, and also remind councillors that you don't enjoy parliamentary privilege, so please be aware of that when speaking. So moving on to item 1, which is to advise the meeting that advise you that the meeting will be webcast and broadcast on the council's YouTube site. Item 2 are declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest for this meeting? There being none, moving to item 3, are there any apologies? I think Councillor Payne sent his apologies in.
Councillor Donaldson.
Councillor Payne and Councillor Donaldson. Okay, any others? Chair's announcements, I don't have any. Item 5, the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of September. Is it agreed they're a correct record of the meeting? Agreed. Thank you. So we're now on to the planning applications. Firstly, from the northwest area. The first is report number 6, which relates to 272A Soho Road. There are 2 reports on this address, on this property. It's very important that as members we keep those issues separate when we're discussing and voting on them. So on item 6, are there any updates?
Thank you, Chair. No updates on this item this morning.
Okay, and I'll throw it open to members for any questions or comments on this report. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. In the consultation response, it says that the regulatory services responded saying that I have no objection subject to operating time of 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. and that in the recommendations, the operating times are just wondering what impact that would have on the consultation with the regulatory services now that the recommendation.
Any other questions or comments on this report? Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, this is an application for the retention. But I don't necessarily disagree with the proposals to try and make it more sympathetic, given that it's the building. But I'm concerned that this building was allowed to go ahead in this form, given how horrific it is. The previously building severe harm that has caused. In my view, this should have been addressed much sooner rather than being.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Marshall.
I'd like to welcome the fact that officers rectify issue pre-trial.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, councillors. I'll start with the issue about the current breach of planning control. So we sought to address this issue once we became aware of it. I think it's fair to say we are very much reliant on being made aware of potential breaches of the planning control to enable our enforcement officers to go out. So we have worked proactively with the landowner to seek to address this breach of planning control, and a result of that is what's in front of you today. In terms of the hours of use, yes, you are correct. The regulatory services recommended hours of use for the retail use and the office accommodation on the first floor between 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening. As officers, we felt that was a little too restrictive within a district centre, such a busy location as Soho Road. Obviously, not wanting to sort of give free rein in terms of 24 hours or something like that, but we certainly felt that 9 till 10 o'clock in the evening was far more reasonable for a retail use within such a busy town centre location.
Thank you. Can I put the recommendations to the committee? All those in favour? Eight votes and no votes against. Sorry, 8 votes in favour, no votes against. That is carried, subject to the conditions laid down in the report. Can we move on to item 7? Again, 272A Soho Road.
Again, no updates on this item, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we do have some speakers on this. Can I invite local resident Shiranjit to address the meeting? Remind you, you've got 3 minutes, yeah? Thanks.
Morning, everyone. My name's Shiranjit Singh, and I was born, raised, and currently reside in Handsworth, Birmingham. I'm actively involved in the local area, focusing on mental health initiatives and housing initiatives. And I'm also working closely with Birmingham City Council to develop a local neighbourhood plan. I argue that this planning application directly contravenes the Birmingham Development Plan and National Planning Policy Framework due to its risk to public health, and should therefore be rejected. Policy TP37 of the Birmingham Development Plan seeks developments that encourage healthy lifestyle choices. Paragraph 130 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that planning create places that promote health and well-being. This application looks for a change of use in creating a new betting establishment. Last year, Public Health England stated there are over 400,000 problem gamblers in England and a further 2 million people at risk. There is an increasing agreement amongst healthcare professionals and the government that gambling harm is fundamentally a public health issue. Gambling harm is complex and it can co-occur with other issues concerning finances, relationships, addiction, and mental health. Gambling harm disproportionately impacts poorer individuals who are more likely to lose money and experience worse health outcomes resulting from gambling. Handsworth is an area that experiences severe socioeconomic deprivation. The area has a high proportion of supported housing, new migrants, and a high unemployment rate compared with other parts of England. These are all risk factors for people falling into gambling harm, which puts more pressure on health and social care services locally. An example from my lived experience. I support health and welfare services in the area, and these are overwhelmed by those who are experiencing drug and alcohol misuse challenges. Often, these folks experience co-occurring challenges.
1 minute left.
Often, these folks experience co-occurring challenges around finances, employment, and housing. A vulnerable resident with such issues could feasibly wake up in their hostel, receive one-to-one support at the healthcare centre, visit the job centre afterwards, and then walk 5 minutes up the road to find countless betting establishments in proximity to off licenses. Here, they can easily spend their day and waste away their money, returning home afterwards and then attending the healthcare centre the very next day. This is by definition a vicious cycle of harm that is entirely preventable. The current officer's report does not respond adequately to the public health implications of gambling and its potential to be exacerbated through this new establishment. As a young resident and community organiser who sees their long-term future in the area, I plead with the committee to listen to us, our councillors and Soho Business Improvement District. Please act responsibly and reject this application in supporting our communities to thrive and flourish. Thank you.
Thank you. And I now invite Henry Hodgson to speak.
Morning, Chair and members. The application relates to the change of use of 272A Soho Road into an adult gaming centre. No external alterations or consents for signage proposed as part of this application. The proposal will result in several benefits, including job creation, generation of link trips, footfall, the replacement of a vacant unit, and a positive contribution to the evening economy, all of which have been recognised by a professional planning officer. My clients' AGCs are where people come to spend their spare change, have a game of bingo, and enjoy their favourite pastime in convenient locations. Furthermore, AGCs do not provide fixed odds betting terminals. This is reflected in the average customer stay, which is 30 to 40 pence. It is accepted that there are sometimes a misconception as to how AGCs operate in practice. This is important to understand that AGCs are not noisy uses. The games appeal to individuals and not groups of people. AGCs are also strictly controlled in the way they operate. They do not serve alcohol and they operate a Think 25 entrance policy. A robust noise assessment has been submitted as part of the application, and this has been accepted by regulatory services. My client has shown a willingness to cooperate with the council, accepting opening hours between 8 AM till midnight. This, alongside the operational management plan submitted, ensures safeguarding of the surrounding amenity. Therefore, the proposal would not harm the neighbouring occupiers in terms of noise and disturbance, and is compliant with adopted policy DM2. Regulatory services also raised no objection subject to conditions relating to the operating time, plant and machinery noise levels, noise mitigation, and no amplified sound, of which will be adhered to. It should be noted that the amendments to the use class order have introduced the e-use class to instill flexibility on the high street, none more so in recent months given struggling centres following the pandemic. The building is vacant and requires investment, which is the applicant is committed to. There are many vacancies across the primary shopping area, and ample retail floor space remains, which is supported through the Birmingham City Council's retail study, confirming retail uses account for 65%, confirming the change of use will not breach the threshold of 55%. Whilst feedback has been welcomed and acknowledged, it remains unclear how objectives can argue that the proposal will result in antisocial behaviour, especially when there is no evidence to support these claims. General statements made about problem gambling and vulnerable people have been covered in the licensing process, of which my client has obtained. Further, if a market demand did not exist for this type of use, my client would not be seeking to locate here. Overall, the proposals represent a policy and technically compliant scheme, offering a complementary use to the centre. We therefore politely request that the members support their professional planning officer's recommendation to approve the application. Thank you.
Can I invite the area planning manager to comment before I throw it open to members?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you to our speakers this morning. Very interesting points being raised by both speakers there. I think in terms of I think a good starting point here is to sort of make very clear that the role of the planning system, local planning authorities, and members of the planning committee, the role is not to sort of determine whether such establishments should exist in the first place. You know, that's not up for discussion. I think what is important is to identify that the use is classed as a sui generis use. So it doesn't fall within a particular or identified use class within the use class order, but it does share many characteristics with other town centre uses. So actually, in terms of a suitable location in principle for a adult gambling centre, a town centre or a local centre is, in planning terms, the appropriate location for such a use because it will be visited by members of the public and the like. From a planning perspective, we are very much looking and appraising, excuse me, appraising the use of the land or the use of the building rather than appraising an individual. It's worth pointing out that adult gambling centres, as with other gambling premises, are a regulated industry. And operators are subject to licensing conditions and code of practice from the Gambling Commission. I'd also like to draw members' attention to paragraph 7.7 within the report. As such, the proposed use would be subject to a separate licensing regime that would need to demonstrate how the use would be operated in a manner that would address concerns around matters such as antisocial behaviour, criminal behaviour, drug taking, drunkenness, and encourage an increase in gambling. So that very much sort of focuses on the issues around public health, which the gentleman was talking about. So from a planning perspective, it's about the land use, the principle of the land use of what is a town centre use within the town centre or within the local centre. And it's not an appraisal of an individual operator and the issues which are addressed through the separate licensing regime. I think that's all for now. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Peter. Comments and questions from members. Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, both. Reading the report, I take great weight from what Soho Road Business Improvement District and Westminster Police say. Particularly Soho Road Business Improvement District, like they know what's best for their traders and for their shoppers. But both them and the Westminster Police have objected to the proposal due to the likely increase in crime and antisocial behaviour. We want our high streets, like Soho Road, to be a hive of activity. I just fear this will not help with that, so I'll be rejecting.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. There's several things. I mean, first of all, we're considering what is a vacant unit, but is a relatively new build. When new buildings are built, they are initially vacant. So I don't think we should attach too much weight on the fact that it's vacant. In terms of the licensing aspects, they're mutually exclusive to planning, so I don't license for gambling activity or not. But I am very much swayed by the representation by West Midlands Police. I appreciate this is a concern because people reference within the reports, but we should judge each application on its own merits. It does not mean that there isn't the evidence to support refusal of this application either. Obviously, the evidence there is a West Midlands Police now. They have the evidence to support their objection. Particularly if it should go to appeal, so that they are concerned about what this premise is. Their view on who should support those.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed.
Yes, I also echo what Councillor Moore and Councillor Marshall was saying regarding the police objection on this item. They say that it will remain increase the crime rate. As such, I think we are minded to support the view of the police in my opinion on this item. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I also echo what my colleague has already said, that someone who have represented that area for some time and also my neighbouring board at the moment. I think there's already a huge problem with the crime and other antisocial behaviour that are agree with the police with what they're saying when they're objecting to the planning application. And I think we should take this into on board when we make the decision.
Thank you. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. And I think it's really important to take in the West Midlands Police objections, particularly around public health, threats to public health, but also listening to the local representative on those issues. But also on the National Policy Framework section 1, I would state that both of those paragraphs that are referenced support a stance of objecting to this application, and I'll be minded to do so.
Yeah, I'm definitely swaying towards rejecting, I'm afraid, basically because of what the police have said. But I want some clarification from you, really. It's described as a gaming centre, but I'm a bit unclear as to exactly what you're intending to do in there. Gaming, to me, subjects this big, EA type sports type thing, whereas you mentioned bingo, so I'm a bit confused. What actually is?
Can I just say that your question is being directed to our officer? Okay. Any other members wish to comment on this? Councillor Hussain.
Yeah, I live like a stone throw away from Soho Road, and I actually support what the police say in objecting.
Area planning manager back.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. The issue about crime and the fear of crime, which, as members will know, is a material consideration, has been a particularly tricky part of the appraisal of this application. can see within the report, there's a significant level of objection from local residents, from local business, from Soho Road bid, from councillors, from the police as well. So that is definitely recognised. A significant level of objection from West Midlands Police, which does hold significant weight in terms of the balancing exercise. Now, particular points of interest which the police have raised is about gambling premises generating a disproportionate high number of calls for service from the police, late night venues being a potential to host incidents of crime and antisocial behaviour, and also betting establishments themselves can become a target of crime. So it's also probably worthwhile pointing out that officers are fully aware of a recent decision made by this committee on a similar sort of establishment on the High Street in Erdington, and that did include a reason for refusal relating to increased fear of crime and antisocial behaviour, as well as a failure to create a safe environment that promotes positive social interaction. You will also note within the officer's report that we've made specific reference to an appeal decision. Whilst located in the city centre, sort of bottom end of High Street at the junction with Dale End, that site and this application site share many similar issues and many characteristics in terms of concerns around crime, fear of crime, antisocial behaviour. And that application also received a very similar level of objection from West Midlands Police, including sort of the supporting evidence submitted. So there are a lot of similarities can be drawn between that application, that appeal and this application. So we put a couple of quotes from that appeal decision within the officer report in front of you, and the inspector did include that there was limited evidence to show that the premises would facilitate or increase the likelihood of criminal activities occurring. So this is a bit which is not particularly easy for officers and isn't particularly easy for members as well. It is bearing in mind the nature of the objection raised by the police. Unless the premises was actually operating and was clearly facilitating criminal activities, it's not actually clear what evidence could actually be submitted. It's not, it's not clear. And it does raise a question. Where is the best place to address the areas of concern? Is it the planning system or is it through the licensing regime? And again, I would just refer to the what I said earlier on about the land use. So the planning is very much focusing on the land use of a town centre use within a town centre. And the licensing deals with separate issues, including the management of the premises and things in place to address items which have been raised in relation to public health. So the reason why there's a recommendation for approval is in front of you is we don't feel it's been an easy call, and it's not going to be an easy call for the members really, but to be consistent with the appeal decision of officers to follow the sort of the on balance recommendation. It is very much an on balance recommendation, and to be consistent with the appeal decision, officers feel that it should be a recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chair.
I'm going to put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? No. All those against? That is refused with 8 votes.
So just so we can confirm what reasons that we're refusing that one, do you want to run through some of?
So, I mean, listening to the discussions, it very much strikes me that there are concerns which I think have sort of planning grounds, talking about issues of crime and antisocial behaviour. And I'm very mindful that was the reason for refusal with the recent similar establishment street. So if with members' agreement,
I think that summarises the objections that members had. Yes.
Is that a fair point?
Yeah.
In terms of the discussion around the
I feel because it is I feel that's addressed more closely through the licensing regime, in all honesty. There's no actual evidence being presented. For example, there's no representation from any public health bodies or anything like that. Clearly, we've got an objection from West Midlands Police, so there is sort of significant weight to that view which members are sharing. Sorry.
I think the officers have been given sufficient guidance by members as to why that application has been refused.
What I would like to suggest is, rather than, and I know normal practice is to bring a report back with a recommended reasonable refusal, if members are minded to agree that we use the reasonable refusal relating to antisocial behaviour and crime with the Erdington example and just replicate that on this application.
So can I put that to the committee that we follow that course of action?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So we're on to item 8, which relates to 28 Weather Oak Road, Spark Hill. Officers time to relocate themselves. Any updates on this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One update on this application. So amended proposed ground floor and first floor plans have been received. Ground floor plan shows additional refuse storage bins within the rear yard area, and the amended first floor plan shows an access door blocked. The access door was given access to a flat roof, and that it's now proposed for that door to be blocked. Therefore, to take account of these amended plans, we would need to amend condition 2, approved plans, condition 9, refuse storage, to take account of those amended plans. Also, I suggest an additional condition, condition 10, that the first floor rear access doorway shall be blocked off before the flats are first occupied. Thank you, Chair.
Can I say that as the objector has not come to the meeting, that there will be no public speaking on this item. So can I throw it open to the committee for any questions or comments? Councillor Marshall.
Let's be honest, the site's a bit of a mess. I think the other side is welcome with the conditions. So particularly the more refuse bins and stuff around the room as well. I think that's to be welcomed.
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just concerned about the lack of parking to support this, given that clearly it's expected to run the application and the passive aggressive signs of parking outside kind of demonstrate that there clearly is a parking issue there. And whether this is going to exacerbate an existing problem by the failure to provide adequate parking arrangements to support this new use.
Any other questions? Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, I noticed in the report there's no objection from the Transportation Development or the Regulatory Services or the West Midlands Police or the Severn Trent Water. So there are no objections from this consultation responses. There have been some third-party responses, but I think these covers all the highlighted.
Other questions or comments? I'll bring Tony back.
Thank you for those comments, councillors. It's fair to say that there are some issues at the site that we are trying to resolve through the approval of this application. So a couple of units have been converted to retail without consent. The unit on the left-hand side was a former manufacturing and packaging unit, and the unit on the left-hand side, and the unit on the right-hand side was former offices. So those two units have been converted into retail without consent. It is the site is located within Spark Hill Local Centre, adjoining the primary shopping area. So it is policy compliant in that respect. In terms of car parking, it's fair to say that within local centres, car parking is an issue. But that's the way the local centres operate. That there's very few shops along Stratford Road that do have off-street car parking. And I feel that the approval of these 2 units for retail purposes won't make the parking situation any worse. In terms of the first floor is currently vacant. It could be used for storage. What's proposed is to use the first floor for 3 flats, 2 one-bedroom flats and a 2-bed flat. That is in accordance with policy. That's something that we would clearly support. And again, I don't consider that using the first floor for 3 flats would have any significant impact in terms of highway issues and parking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Put the recommendations to you. All those in favour? Eight. 8 votes in favour, no votes against. That is carried, subject to the conditions laid down in the report. Can we move on to item 9, which relates to 201 Stockfield Road?
Thank you, Chair. We do have an update on this one. We have an amended site plan. If you look at the site plan on page 2 of the committee report, you'll note there's currently 4 vehicular accesses into the site. There's an access on the looking at the plan on the northwest. There's an access on Stockfield Road. There's also an access on the corner of Stockfield Road and Amington Road, and there's 2 further accesses along Amington Road. The plan that you see before you indicates that the access on the northwest will be blocked and the access on the corner will be retained. Following discussions with the Transportation Department, we've received tracking plans and so on. It's now being decided to block the access on the junction, which I think makes sense from a highways point of view, and to retain the access to the northwest of the site. So we have an amended plan, revision D. If members are happy with that revision, then condition 2 would need to be amended to take account of that revision. Condition 2 is the amended plans condition. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I understand we have no public speakers on this item. Is that correct? In which case, I'll throw it open to members. Some more.
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 concerns in relation to this application. The first one is the obvious one, parking. I appreciate there is some substantial parking offered, but this is going to have some substantial banqueting hall, and that's a lot of people who most likely will drive to this place. And I'm concerned that the parking arrangements are not sufficient, despite what our current policy says. And I think we can take the example that there are a number of banqueting halls across Birmingham. All of them have associated parking issues. Quite often it's slightly chaotic, and you can always tell. Have raised that this may be brought to their neighbourhood if this is granted as a banqueting hall. So I am concerned that is not sufficient. It's the noise, because this is currently a car showroom. I assume it doesn't have particularly loud music blasting during the day when it's open. And usually I assume this will be weddings and other sorts of birthdays and sorts of events, which are generally not quiet in the evening. So I do think the building will probably not have the noise in, which could be for very loud celebrations, understandably so, and therefore I'm concerned of the noise impact of neighbouring properties. The reports seem to suggest that the nearest one is 34 metres away, but looking on the map, it seems to be surrounded by residential properties. And given that the building is designed presumably to retain noise, that there's the real risk of escape, and that there could be a real noise nuisance for the local area, particularly in terms of it escaping into the area. So I'm not content with this proposal in its current form.
Councillor Marshall.
So this is a large vacant site that should be put back into meaningful use, and the new jobs are welcomed. I know that the Yardley MP, Jess Phillips, put forward relevant comments on behalf of residents about noise and parking, which I believe will be tackled by the conditions attached to this proposal. If it goes ahead, I have clarity on that.
I was going to allude to the Member of Parliament making a representation regarding noise concerns. If some conditions could be attached regarding noise, then I think I feel that I will be supporting this application.
Councillor Deakin.
Thank you. Yeah, on that level of the conditions attached, I would be minded to support it. I, however, do share some of the concerns, particularly around emergency vehicles, which have been raised from objectors, from local residents. I don't bear much weight to the devaluing of property within the local area, because I haven't seen any evidence for why that would happen. But on the issue of parking, if those conditions can be met, I would be minded to support it. And I would also say that some of the representations from local members of Parliament don't necessarily raise objections, just similar concerns to which the conditions might fit.
Thank you. Questions or comments? I bring the area planning manager back.
What's the capacity?
I do apologise. Sorry, I didn't see.
What is the capacity going to be for the venue?
Right. Thank you, members, for those comments. In terms of the capacity 700. It's clear that members have primarily two concerns. The first concern relates to parking and highway matters, and the second concern relating to sort of noise and disturbance. In terms of car parking, clearly we have a car parking policy, a newly adopted policy, which basically says that for every 5 cars, we should have 1 parking space. So this particular venue is proposing 700 covers, so we need 140 parking spaces. And it's fair to say there are many venues that don't have sufficient car parking. In this case, it's proposed to provide 219 spaces. So policy says 140. The adjoining industrial unit also has a need for 25 spaces according to policy. So in total, we need 165 parking spaces at the site. So we effectively have 54 too many parking spaces. So I don't think car parking will be an issue. Transportation has carefully looked at the layout, carefully looked at the parking requirements, and have concluded that they have no objections. In terms of noise and disturbance, the nearest residential properties, this is a freestanding site, and the nearest residential properties are either on the other side of significant roads, Stockfield Road, Amington Road, or the other side of the canal. The nearest residential properties are 34 metres away. As part of the application, a noise impact assessment was provided by the applicant. And that noise impact assessment basically looked at 3 issues. What is the likely noise generation from within the building? What is the noise generation from perhaps additional plant and machinery? And what is the noise generation from the car park? And transport and regulatory services have gone through the noise assessment, and they've concluded that they have no objections. They've said that I think as part of the proposal, some roller shutter doors will be removed and they will be replaced with double glazed units. The area at the rear, which currently is an open area, which will be used for storage of furniture, again, that will be clad with insulated cladding. So the building itself, we feel, can control the noise, and they've suggested conditions, so a control amplified sound, to control the amplified sound, a condition, an hours of use condition, a delivery hours condition. Subject to those conditions, they've expressed no objection. In terms of the site itself, it is on a busy junction, and the main cause of noise at the moment is from the ambient noise levels is basically from vehicles within the surrounding road network, and they consider that the uses generated from this use will not be substantially higher than the existing high ambient noise levels. So in conclusion, we've got no objections from regulatory services, as you say, no objections from the police, no objections from the fire service. Therefore, we consider the proposals are acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
The recommendations are in paragraph 9 with the conditions listed. Can I see those in favour, please? Any against? That is carried with 7 votes in favour, 1 against. The recommendations, as I said, are listed on page 9 and 10 of the report. Thank you. On to report number 10, Equipoint.
And no updates, thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any questions or comments from members? Can I put the recommendation to you, wherever they are? Recommendations in paragraph 8 on page 14. All those in favour? 8. No votes against. That's carried with the recommendations with the conditions listed. Where am I? My agenda's gone blank. Urgent business. There being none, can we agree the necessary authority to chairman and officers? Thank you.